Yeah, there you go. Why is that up there?
Is what?
Does this say play from start? I think it is.
Yeah.
This one. That's your $5. Who's in the bus? Who's in the bus? Okay, QST or CQ or whatever you want to hear. We're late. I apologize for that. But I do want to draw your attention to the latest barnyard scene. We have some of our notables well established in the barnyard. Anyway, so looks like Jason's driving today. All right. Welcome, Sarah and friends. If we have any friends here, or if this is your first time at an illustrious Sarah meeting, please raise your hand. And, sir, you're up, and you're our newest member. So introduce yourself to the group, please. Oh. He said he joined 5 seconds ago. Tell us again who you are and what you say it again.
Okay, Ed Smeltz, and I'm from Medina, and I joined about 5 seconds ago.
7 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, it's 8.
Okay, well,
Wait
8
a
or
minute,
9.
it's 11 now. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll just have to keep amending it.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Hang on.
Hi, I'm Scott, KE80M, this is Scott from Mansfield. Yeah, I'm the one that just got over the sinus surgery. I had 2 black eyes and all bruised up on the side of my face for 2 weeks, but it's getting better. But it's good to be here, and I just joined up this afternoon before I came down.
Sign, kind of.
Oh, good.
There you go.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it. Anybody else? Any other newbies? Yes.
For all the new people, we sell 50-50 tickets. So buy your 50-50 ticket.
Okay. So the message is, buy your 50-50 tickets.
If you bought 50-50 tickets already, buy more.
Russ has got a one-track mind. Okay, we are the best-looking hens in the hobby. Just take a look around. I mean, really and truly. I rest my case. Also, the nicest. John Wagner made me say that. He really did. All right, newly elected officers. There we go. We got a new group here. Let's start with the old group first. VP is Nick, SD8. Did I say S? KD8SLG. Nick's back there as VP. You?
A new member.
Yeah. And I'm, believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm the president. I do accept any impeachment, contrary to the Senate of the United States. I do accept impeachment.
I do not.
Anyway, so Mike was our secretary. He stepped up, and he is now our new treasurer. Jeff on the very far end. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he'll take it. He's not here, but he'll take it. Maybe he is here. Jeff is not here. He got a better offer. I can't imagine what, but nevertheless, Jeff, we're not going to lose his expertise. He was selected by the executive committee as the newest trustee. So our three direct trustees are Dave Spondyke, NT8D, Doug Hunter, and Jeff Rohr. So there you have it. That's our trustees and your elected officials. All right, the Tusco Amateur, these are announcements now. We're into the announcements. Tusco Amateur Radio Club Hamfest is coming up on April 27th. It's a great Hamfest. It's a little further, but nevertheless, it's a real good Hamfest. If you would like additional information, w8zx.net, click on the Hamfest tab, and then you'll have it. Our next scheduled VE session is Saturday, June 1st, 2024 at the Sharon Center United Methodist Church. That's in Medina County. And the webpage, w8wky.org, click on the Education tab, and it's the very first item, license exams, or I think it says exams. Stefan, do you have anything to add here?
Just that our last session, which happened the beginning of the month, was a success. We had 17 people, 15 either got a license or went on to get an upgrade, including SEK.
Yay! Congrats.
2 people didn't make the tech, but they promised they're going to come back for the next session.
There were 2 guys on the barometer net right after that session that had gotten extra tickets as well. So yeah, so that was kind of cool to hear, and I got to tell you, our VE team is stellar. So, and they do a great job. All right. Oh God, who did that? I didn't do that.
That's you, man.
All right.
Chat GPT again, aren't you?
All right. Actually, it's Bing Images.
Okay.
So,
It kind of looked like Dick Wilson at a younger age.
yeah. Well, if you don't want Dick Wilson at a younger age coming after you, you better get your dues paid. Or next step, there's letters coming out. And if all else fails, we do have a number of horses that we're going to cut their heads off, just so you know. That was a joke. All right. Any other announcements for the good of the cause? Yes, sir.
Hi, KE8BHQ Ben. I picked up a new antenna analyzer. I have a rig expert in my truck if anybody's interested in buying one. About all I got. It's a 35 zoom, 150 bucks.
There you go. Rig expert. Not a bad price either. Yeah. Also, Zeke's gear is in the back. Oh, well, I got a slide for Zeke's gear. Anyway, we do have some stuff back there. Is there still more stuff back there?
Yeah, there's stuff on that side of the bar, and what doesn't go tonight will probably go in that nice community
Trash can?
bin over there. So if you even have a marginal interest, take it and throw it out at home.
There you go. Okay. Any other announcements for the good of the cause? Okay. Approval of the minutes. Our new secretary, Fred, you did not do the minutes this time. Actually, I think they were a little late coming out, and I do have some here.
I can't believe somebody put a minute late.
Anyway, hey, John, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Dorsey, we can need to talk. Here's a couple of these for you guys. Yes? Okay, minutes. Anyway, I apologize for them not getting out a little bit sooner, but that's why we replaced Mike, you know? I mean, he was just, I don't know, just kind of lax.
Mike did a great job. Come on, we don't know how to read.
There you go. All right, anyway, meeting minutes for March have just been distributed, so I need a motion to adopt the minutes. You're the secretary, Fred.
But I didn't take those minutes, Gary. What do you want?
He knows how to spell his name. Put it on the minutes.
Here, me the minutes.
No, you can keep. All right, NAWB with, and I need a second. Okay. Yeah, HRF. What kind of letters are those anyway? All right, any dissension on the minutes? No. All right, very good. Meetings, that's passed. Okay, the 2024 Treasurer's Report. We have a total general fund allocation of about $4,600. Mike, I don't know how much you had to do with this. There is going to be this transition thing, especially with the Treasury, because it is a bit complicated. Okay, so anyway, these are the things we got. This is the meeting hall rental. Okay, it does include the Christmas party. Apparel sales, just some stuff there. I don't know what all this stuff is actually. As you're going to find out here shortly, we did a lot of work. Jason did a lot of work with the fox hunt, and we have the Handy Finder. That's our club build project for this spring. Anyway, bottom line is we do maintain $1,000 in our repeater replacement fund. We keep that on hand, and that leaves us about just south of $5,000 in the general fund allocation, which we're going to buy some field day stuff, and that's going to be coming up here shortly. Okay, any questions about the Treasurer's Report? Motion to accept. Jason? Second. Benny? All in favor? Aye. Yay! Nice job, you guys. Any dissension? Okay, good job. All right, field day t-shirts. We went a different path. These are the old designs right here on my shirt. That's what you used to get. I mean, like ready or not, here it comes. There's a couple of them around here. This is 2022. 2023 was very much the same. We just changed colors. This year, we have a new design, compliments of Sasquatch. He came out of hiding, and quite honestly, Dustin, your design was 12 votes better than anybody else's design. So,
Nice.
well, then she gets the free T-shirt then. All right, that's the field day T-shirt. Notice it's you're going to have blue shirt, periwinkle or something like that. It's called Aquatech. Aquatech. And it's got the little Sarah logo on the sleeve, which is a nice touch. Short sleeve, small to extra large is 15. Long sleeve is 18, and the 2XL to 6XL And 6XL, if there's any 6XL, we'll have to see what's available. But anyway, for sure 2XL to 5XL, and those are your prices there, 20 and 23.
KE8, UIB is doing the work.
Yes, I'm doing it.
That guy right there. It's really nice having an insider to the business help us through this.
She quit drinking.
She's so cute. Okay, real quick about the apparel rollout. We're going to have the rollout right after Field Day. We'll start it in July, and the whole list there is still there. Lightweight jacket, long sleeve tees, etc. We went over this before. We're also going to add a button-down Oxford long sleeve shirt that would be embroidered with the club logo and and it can be personalized if you want it. The Field Day tees are not going to be personalized. Okay, any questions about the actual apparel sale coming up after Field Day? All right. Here's good old Zeke, and I got to tell you, we did a nice job for him at the Ham Fest. It was north of $8,000. Hey, do you want me to drink it? I can do that. Yeah. All right. I'm going to get Father of the Year again. Okay. So anyway, just wanted to report back. We probably will have another giveaway of things that are they're just odds and ends and some things like that. We have another whole building to go through, which we will do, and anything of any value will, anything of value that's sellable value anyway, we'll proceed with that. But I think Zeke's wife is going to be quite happy with what we did. So anyway, that's that. Next, Field Day update. You have 4 minutes.
Huh?
You have 4 minutes.
Do I get a microphone? That's fabulous. Wait, let me get this book I have to read.
3 minutes 59,
Okay.
58.
This is really not a Field Day update. It's more of a rah-rah session. Where's the camera? All right, why Field Day? A poem by Nick. No. All right, we're going to... What's that? Oh, no, I write in haiku.
Awesome.
Yes. So it's the contest. It's not a contest. We're going to treat it more like a contest this year and less like a party. But the fact of the matter is, it's Sarah Field Day, so it's a party. Okay? It's like a ham fest, but you don't have to spend any money. It's like a POTA activation, except we have air conditioning, bathrooms, and no mosquitoes. And it's like a picnic because Russ makes us food. So it's a good time. Now, so if you're a tech, you can come in and you can work HF. We'll have people there so you can do that kind of stuff. If you're a tech and you're getting your general license and you've gotten to the point where you've got to make that decision that almost all of you make, which is, should I get a 7300 or a 991A?
7,300.
This is your chance to come in and actually touch them and use them. And last year we had two 7300s going. Lane and Phil, wherever he is, had two 991As. So if you want to get your hands on one before you make a decision, come in there. You can sit down and play with them for an hour. And Stadler and Waldorf up at DX Engineering behind the counter are not going to let you do that. And we got some other radios. 857, is that what you had in your box?
Yes.
Last year, 857, 705, Lane, you used 705 last year, and let's not forget the DX10 with the monitor. So lots of fun radios to play with. You want to come out and get in there, and overnight hours are when we're going to need people. And of course, if you want to learn how to do FT8, if you want to watch people watch paint dry, that will be going on too. And Lane and I just talked about setting up a corner with something else going on, and we'll talk about that later on. Cool thing is we have 2 more club meetings before field day. We have one 2 days before field day. So next month, I'm going to be recruiting and hammering you pretty hard. And the meeting right beforehand, I'm going to have sign-up sheets and make you commit yourself to times. And that will get butts in seats. And let's try to place this year in points rather than just be there. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, next, we are totally looking forward to this, the Spring Club Build Project. That actually was what came out of last month's presentation about fox hunting, etc. So we thought we would proceed with this. There's been a lot of banter about having a fox hunt and having gear to do a fox hunt with. This is the Handy Finder. That is the club build. That's coming up on the 28th, I believe. Jason, you want to fill us in on all the details, please?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole, thanks. Not a whole lot of details other than we had 11 people sign up. Moving over here now. We had 11 people sign up. I did buy one extra kit because inevitably someone says, oh, I forgot to sign up. So there's one kit. I'm just putting that out there. $80. Go watch last month's presentation if you want to learn about how the Handy Finder works, because
Yeah,
he
that's a good
covered it. I don't
presentation.
need to recover it. So that's it.
All right, 28th, and it's going to be at my QTH. We're going to fire up the garage. All right, well, don't sit down. The Bob Bowman Memorial Fox Hunt, again, in preparation for this, we are prepared. Yeah, give him the mic. Go ahead.
I built a fox.
I build box.
I'm honestly at a loss for what more you want me to say about this.
Okay, I'll say it then. So Jason took it upon himself to build a fox because we didn't want to bother Barbara Bone. David talked about getting the fox from her, and she told me a couple months ago that when she's ready, she'll contact us. And we've already volunteered to help her with Bob's estate. But in the meantime, not to wait for a fox, Jason built one for us, and it's pretty clever, looks kind of cool. You know, unfortunately, I don't have the soundtrack. I should have put that on here. But it goes, here, let me give you a rendition. Okay, everybody ready? Da 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 da.
That sounds just like it.
And so forth. All right. Okay, well, you're welcome, Jason. I took your segment. We do have, so, I'll give him a megaphone. Okay, so here's the deal. We are going to build fox hunting antenna finder thingies. Okay, and we have a fox, so we're going to be all set. All set. Anyway, I'm looking forward to this, and we can expand this out. I know CFARC is very interested in fox hunting. They actually have multiple fox hunts in the summertime, and that's something that we can do. And actually,
Nords is having one this weekend.
are they really? So I think we should, once we get all prepared and practice a little bit, we should have a fox off. And we can challenge Nords and CFARC and anybody else, Wayne, anybody. And we can have a fox off and we can have a little contest. It'll be kind of fun. Anyway, just a thought. That's really all we have. Anybody for the good of the cause? Fred.
Back in the 80s, North Coast
We have one transmitter, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, who's gonna operate?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, whoever.
The minutes will not be complete unless I get an answer.
To be,
You're the
to be organized at a later date. Okay, anybody else for the good of the cause? Questions, concerns, any new business, anything you need to bring up? Yes, Russ.
I told some people about this computer I have over here. It's free. Somebody please take it. There's 2 monitors, the tower, keyboard, I don't know what else in there, but it's all in there. It should work. I sent it back to factory. It has an operating system. So if somebody wants to play with it, it's free.
Okay, free computer.
Then I have these hats and stuff. If anybody wants any of those.
All right. I hope you washed them at least. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else have anything for the good of the cause? I will say I do have the Barometer Net t-shirts still. There's a couple people who haven't gotten them. I should probably check that out and give them an email, but anyway, I do have a couple extras. So,
How much?
I think they were $18. Anyway, that's, anybody else? John, anything? No? Betty? Anything? No? Okay. All right. 50-50 raffle. And again, the next Sarah meeting. And thanks for pointing out my mistake there, Jason. April 18th. Huh. How about May 16th? Yeah, May 16th. 7 p.m. right here. Okay, who's going to pull the winning ticket there, Russ?
Let Betty do it.
Betty, you want to pull the winning ticket?
$140 collected. The prize will be $70. And if you folded your ticket when you put it in here, I'm straightening them out. Anybody else want a ticket? Time's up.
Did Betty pick?
Benny?
You're going to let, no, Betty. Betty.
Oh.
Pick a winner, Betty. We're doing your college fund, I promise. His name's Mr. Wilson. Just one. Just one. 4.
That's what Noah said to the rabbits. Only 2. Only 2. Yay! Good job.
2001 89.
Yes, right here. All right, Jim's buying.
All right, Dick didn't win. So who won? Jim. Hey, good job. Good job. All right, our Tech Talk tonight, all about antennas from Jason McCormick.
Who's the treasurer?
Adjourn?
Oh. Oh, yeah, I guess. Okay, if there's nothing else, I need a motion for adjournment. Marty, second. Fred. I don't know if the second. I'll have to check with
Check with Dave
What?
about the parliamentary procedures.
Hats over here I was gonna give away, but
Okay. That's good. Don't forget shirts and hats and a computer over there and some of Zeke's stuff back here. All right, Jason, thank you. Take it away, sir.
I am very serious about Zeke's stuff back there. If it's on the bar at the end of the meeting, it will not be anywhere. So if you even think you want it, please, please take it. All right. So Gary contacted me over the weekend and asked me to pull together a presentation. So you're going to be subjected tonight to what I happen to think about over the weekend. We're going to talk about choosing antennae, and we're going to talk a little bit tonight. This is going to be more of a theoretical discussion than anything about particular antennas. And what we're going to go through is a little bit of antenna theory, but really about how to think about choosing an antenna. What are the considerations that you need to think about before you even get to I'm building a whatever, I'm putting up a tower, I'm going to whatever, right? What are the things that we need to think about? So if you're deep into physics or an RF engineer, that's great. I've glossed over and simplified a lot of this, so feel free to tell me later everything I said that wasn't quite accurate. But I've tried to simplify this quite a bit. So we talk a lot about wavelength, right? A particular frequency has a wavelength, which is an actual physical distance, right? Over which the wave or a periodic function travels between 2 points, right? So, literally wave, right? But that's really just the beginning of how to choose an antenna. A lot of times people talk about things like dipoles, and I need 132 feet to put up an 80-meter dipole. Well, yes, but there's a lot of other considerations that you can get to in there. The one thing I did want to point out too is this is used a lot in the ARR literature. We're going to use it here tonight. The concept of wavelength is represented by the Greek lowercase letter lambda. It's a lot easier than writing 1/2 wavelength to just write 1/2 lambda. So you'll see this a few times tonight. If you're not familiar with it, lambda just is the placeholder for wavelength. But antenna performance and how to use it goes beyond just the wavelength of an antenna. It's connected to the matching characteristics to create or optimize for resonance. For certain types of antennas, this means that height above ground is really important. For other types of antennas, height above ground is completely irrelevant. But where you put it changes its resonance, some of its reactance, its gain, elevation. We're going to talk about all these terms here in just a few minutes. Also, wavelength is not necessarily a one-to-one relationship between a physical size and the electrical bandwidth of an antenna. Just because you want to be on 80 meters and half wavelength of 80 meters is 132 feet, it doesn't mean that you have to figure out a way to put up a 132-foot antenna. Perhaps most importantly, avoid things that cause your antenna to behave poorly. We'll talk about what some of those are. And optimize your antenna for the things that you actually care about. And we'll get into what that means here in a few minutes. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them here in the middle or whatever. So there's a couple of attributes of antennas that we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to stand back here a little bit because it's really hard for me to see my own notes up there. We're going to talk about, these are the basic attributes of antennas. It has directivity, and we're going to define all of these. It has directivity, it has gain, it has polarization, it has a current and voltage distribution, it has impedance, it has height, it has a bandwidth, it has ground, and it has elevation. Now, the ones that are in gray here are not going to be discussed tonight. Those are an entire physics chapter in itself. So we're not going to cover, this is a pretty complex topic of current, voltage, impedance, and height, and how that all works together. Not going to cover it other than to state that your goal is to get 50 ohms or so at the point where you're feeding your antenna with coax, assuming you're feeding it with coax. We'll talk about that later too, maybe. This has to either be natural or using a transformer, a Balun, an Unan, whatever, right? Very complicated topic we're going to completely ignore and just say we need it to be 50 ohms. Oh, did I skip a slide there? No, I didn't. Okay. So basic attributes of antennas. You may have seen a chart like this before in ARRL literature, in files about an antenna that you may be building. And we're going to look at these in a couple of ways. What this chart itself shows is two of those characteristics of an antenna. The first one is the directivity of the antenna. This is the size and shape of the radiation pattern of the RF energy as it leaves the antenna, right? So in this diagram, you have to kind of imagine that you're sort of hanging in free space and you're just kind of staring down at the top of your antenna, right? So your antenna is right here in the middle of this diagram. And as you can see, it's a 360-degree compass, essentially, right? So the directivity is any point along this circle, that's the directivity of some portion of the radiation coming off of your antenna. Now, obviously, that's not the only story, right? Because there's a complicated chart with lots of numbers, so it's not that simple, right? The other attribute that's on this chart is what's called gain. Now, when we're talking about this topic, we usually think of gain as just an increase in performance over something, right? We talk about an antenna with gain. Well, all antennas have gain, right? It just may not be the type of gain you want because it might be negative gain. You can have negative gain, otherwise known as losses. But usually in this way, it's referred to as gain, right? And gain has two components. So gain, as the transmission component, has the focus of power in a particular direction relative to the power supplied at the end of the feed line. So if you think about your basic antenna, right? You've got a piece of coax going out, it plugs into an antenna, the antenna does something, right? So the gain of an antenna is measured off of how much power that you've delivered to that feed point of your antenna, regardless of where you're feeding it, how you're feeding it, if there's a Balun, whatever, it doesn't matter. The gain is relative to the power that's being sent up the antenna. The other thing that gain has is and some antennas have gain in the ability to receive signals from given directions, right? So a lot of times we talk about gain in the transmit part of things. If you do a RF safety calculation, for example, you're always talking about transmit gains and losses, gains and losses in your transmitter. But gain also plays a function in your reception. So notably, Yagi and log periodic type antennas, right? Where you're turning them and not only to transmit more power in a given direction, they're also really good at amplifying received signals so that there's a gain of the received signal so you can hear the other station better. So in general, right, because everything with this topic is an in general, right? So in general, if we're standing in the middle of nowhere, hanging in the sky, looking straight down at our antenna, what we see here is we have the shape of the directivity combined with the gain gives you this shape of what your radiation pattern looks like. So in this example, I think this was a Yagi, I forget which, now I put it up here, now I forget which example this is. You can see here, here's the center of our antenna. pointing, and these graphs are always north, but obviously it depends on whichever way you feel like turning the antenna, right? Here, full power is north, and then you have decreasing power until you get to the sides of this antenna, where there's almost a null, but not quite, right? Nulls aren't perfect, right? And then on the other side, you have a smaller set of power that's going to the south of this direction. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes. But right here, this blue line is an expression of gain. Now, in this case, the gain is 0, right? So this antenna itself as a design has no gain. It's a dipole, or if you want to get theoretical, it's an isotropic radiator, right? It has no gain in the positive direction, in that it will transmit better or hear better. But it has negative gain or loss in other places that inform how you should think about what that antenna looks like. Does that make sense? Any questions about that before I move on? So this isn't clear. It's not, the next slide's not going to make any sense either. All right. So this is how you read this chart. So this is a this diagram is a dipole, right? So on this side we have that same chart where we're hovering in the air, looking down on top of our antenna. This is what a dipole looks like. So we have a dipole here. This black arrow, direction of the dipole. So in this case we have a dipole that's east-west, right? So what do we see here? At true north, 0 degrees, you have full power. At true south, full power, right? 0 dBi gain. But let's take a look over here, 120 degrees. So to the southeast, right? Well, now the radiation pattern to the southeast has a minus 6 dBi gain, or a 6 dB loss, right? So you start to see how these will inform what type of antenna, where you put it, and what direction it's going to aim. And you can follow this curve all the way around, and as we get up to, remember we talked about these nulls, they're not perfect, right? Like if you put up a dipole and you have a station at exactly 90 degrees, it's not like you can't talk to them, right? It's not a perfect null. But the power is a whole lot less than if they were to the north, right? And we'll talk about why that matters in a few minutes. This is another view. If you were sort of just randomly hovering in the air looking out at your antenna, right, your dipole makes this nice little donut shape, right? So this line here is your antenna wire, and inside the donut there's less signal than way on the outside of the donut. So that's kind of a way to visualize it. Now obviously a dipole making a donut is a nice simple shape. Other antennas don't quite make such a nice shape, but this is a good way to visualize what this radiation emitting from your antenna looks like. And donuts are good. Donuts are good. Any questions? Anything I can clarify for people? All right. So some other, wait, did I skip a slide? Okay. I've reordered these slides so many times now, I forget which one's coming up next. Basic attributes, some other basic attributes of antenna. Polarization. Depending on what kind of radio you do, you may or may not talk a lot about polarization of your antenna. Polarization, these are the technical definitions. The orientation of the E field with respect to the ground. What's the E field? Well, the E field is your emission, your radiation off the antenna, right? It's commonly horizontal or vertical, not both at the same time. Some antennas do have a spherical polarization, but those are a small fraction. It's generally horizontal or vertical, and conveniently, but not always, but most times, the polarity matches, in general, the physics of what the antenna looks like. So if you have a dipole horizontally, your signal's horizontally polarized. If you have a vertical, like a 2-meter antenna, your signal's vertically polarized. It is what it is, right? That's how, in general, that's how they work. Again, not everything, not in all designs, but in general, your polarization is going to look like what the antenna looks like. Mismatched polarization can be a problem largely at shorter distances. This can become a big challenge with things like VHF, UHF signals, where the wave doesn't have time to sort of spread out and be reflected off of the atmosphere and all those kind of things, right? So a mismatched polarization can be a pretty interesting problem. So for example, you can use a 6-meter dipole to get into Marty's 53.17 machine. But you're not going to hear it nearly as well, and it's not going to hear you nearly as well as if you used a vertically polarized horizontal antenna, because as a repeater, it has a horizontally polarized antenna. So in general, you want those things to match, especially when you're closer in rather than further away. And this was a little diagram, you know, so this is kind of the ground here, so horizontal is kind of squiggling along, and then vertical is kind of going up and down the way you normally see it on a piece of paper. Bandwidth. We often think of bandwidth today as how much internet connectivity do I have, right? Which in some odd ways is kind of the same thing, but also really kind of not anymore. For us, bandwidth refers to the range of frequencies over which the antenna exhibits a specified level of performance. I don't know. It was a good textbook definition. I was very excited about it. But what's the practical examples of that? So 20-meter band. If we have an antenna that has a usable SWR, right? So let's say you have a regular radio that has a standard 3-to-1 tuner in it. Your usable bandwidth of that antenna is what you can tune to. So let's say you have a radio that has a 3-to-1 tuner, and you have an antenna that you can tune across the entire 20-meter band. So from 14.35 megahertz to 14 megahertz is 350 kilohertz wide. The bandwidth of your antenna is 350 kilohertz. Now, this in itself doesn't often matter until you get into the cases of things like multi-band antennas. Can you optimize the bandwidth for a particular purpose because all of them are out of skew? I have a Gap Titan, right? Lovely antenna, I love it. One of the best things I've ever invested in as a ham. Based on its design though, it has a very, very narrow 100 kilohertz bandwidth on 80 meters. And you get to pick which one you want. When you buy it, it's like, do you want it between 3.5 and 3.6, 3.6 and 3.7, 3.7 and 3.8, 3.8, 3.9, 3.9, 4.0. Pick one, you only get one, that's its bandwidth on 80 meters. Important to know if you're making those trade-offs, if you're trying to design something. Ground. Very, very, very unscientifically. This is one of the caveats of the physics people in the room, right? It's the concept of the conductivity of the reflected counterpoise to a radiator and the RF energy that reflect from the Earth's surface, literally ground, water, etc. Skipping over a lot of complexity in here, again, if you're an antenna person or a physics person, yes, I know. Basically, your antenna needs to have its own counterpoise, or you need good ground, natural or provided, or both, right? So what do we mean by that? If you have a dipole, if you tear your dipole apart, or you look at the coax, what's going on in a dipole? One leg has the RF energy that's being transmitted by the radiator, the other one is connected to your ground, literally your ground wire and coax. If you have a vertical that requires radials, what's your vertical doing? You've got an upright vertical antenna that you're sending all of your RF energy into. You have a bunch of radials laying on the ground connected to what? The ground shield of your coax, right? Besides the counterpoise concept of your antenna, RF energy also reflects off the literal ground, which affects your radiation patterns. For some antennas, this matters a whole lot. right? Dipoles, for example. If you want the best quote-unquote dipole, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, you want your dipole a half wavelength above the ground. For 10 meters, cool. 80 meters? Right? Because the ground, the literal ground, affects the radiation of these antennas. Again, this is knowledge you need to know because you have to decide when you do and don't care about some of these characteristics. Elevation. This is something that's really interesting that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as some of these other topics. Elevation is if you're looking at the antenna as it relates to the ground. So here in this diagram, we're introducing a new type of diagram. So this is the literal physical ground that you're standing on. And if you think about it, you have 180 degrees from there all the way up over there, right? Where does your antenna send its energy that direction? Because you looked at it from looking down, right? If you go back to the other slide, a dipole makes that donut shape or that figure 8 shape if you're looking down on it, right? It's not just this like big figure 8 infinitely up into the sky, right? Just in 3 dimensions, it looks like that donut. The donut is curved. So some power is going to go higher, some power is going to go lower. This is your elevation, right? Sometimes you hear about this talked about as takeoff angle of an antenna, right? This matters when you get into HF and you're trying to optimize for really long distance communications. And I'm talking like the 5 to 10,000 mile range of things, right? Because what this deals with is this deals with the angle at which energy is going to go out and hit off the atmosphere and come back down. Again, for the physics people, yes, I know. But in general, that's the general concept, right? The lower I shoot that radiation out, it's going to hit the atmosphere further out and ricochet down a lot further than if I shoot it straight up in the air and it bounces straight back down at me, right? Some people will talk about low dipoles being cloud burners or NVIS, right? All that really means is a lot of the energy is going up. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing, right? Hams sometimes like to talk about, oh, that's a cloud burner. Okay, well, you can still communicate a couple thousand miles with that. Who are you trying to talk to? And we'll talk about this a little bit more. So in this example, if we're standing here looking at the very end of the wire of a dipole, this is the top of that donut shape. You've got more power at 30 degrees than you do at 15 or you do at 45. And this is a perfect dipole, obviously. So this is a perfect dipole, 1/2 wave off the ground that is magical in every way, and almost no energy is going to go straight up in the air. Doesn't happen in reality, but that's the theory. Any questions? Yeah.
You also have to take into consideration the band, because I just noticed that 80 meters I hear a lot more local, and 20 meters is farther. So I just imagine that's bouncing off of different layers of the ionosphere. Maybe that's not the same thing as, maybe not. Maybe that's not this elevation concept.
It's part of it.
Okay.
Part of it is because if an 80-meter dipole, right, if you want it to be perfect, again, perfect, right? Your center of your dipole's got to be 132 feet off the ground. Anyone have a 132-foot mast or a 132-foot tree? Where's George? I think he probably has one. But other than that, right? So in those cases, on 80 meters, for example, you have a lot of people with lower antennas that shooting the RF energy straighter up into the air, which is going to cause it to come straighter back down, right? That's the whole concept of NVIS, near vertical incident skywave. That's really important for emergency communications, for example. Like on my Gap Titan, I've talked to like islands in the South Pacific. Completely useless in an emergency response situation. Hey, anybody in the Solomon Islands gonna send me some water, right? I roll out an NVIS antenna though, and now I can talk 6 counties away, right? I can get out of a disaster area. I can talk to someone across state lines, right? This is a concept we struggle with in my industry. We're on all the state emergency radio systems, and all the state radio systems are incompatible with each other. So if I need to call if the phones are down, I need to get a hold of someone in Pennsylvania, well, how am I going to do that, right? And then all the F layers and E layers and things like that, atmospheric conditions play into it as well. So, yep. Any other questions? Oops. Wow. We're done.
Give him a second, back off.
I brought my clicker tonight that I was going to use, and I realized that it is a USB-A adapter in my laptop. I don't know why it's doing that. And my laptop only has USB. Yeah.
Use his clicker. Use Gary's clicker.
That was my clicker.
Oh, that's your.
All right. So why do we care about all these things? All these pictures, all these graphs, numbers, gain that's really losses that we still call negative gain. Who cares? Well, you do. I do. Everyone should. Everyone nod your head. Yes, I care. All right. So questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about building an antenna. These are not questions you ask yourself when you have purchased an antenna. You will be sad if you ask these questions after you have purchased your antenna or you have built your antenna. Who do I want to talk to the most? Do I want to talk to the Solomon Islands, or do I want to talk to people in Indiana? Do I want to talk to the United States? Do I want to talk to Europe? Do I want to talk to Russia? Do I want to talk to the Caribbean? Do I want to talk to everything? I don't know, right? How many antennas do I want to install? I can install one, but maybe what I really want, maybe for who I want to talk to, what I really want is 2, right? Instead of getting a really expensive, super powerful vertical, I'm best served by having 2 cross dipoles, right? How many can I install? Can I install 1? Can I install 20? I don't know. I live on a 5-acre lot. I can install lots of antennas, right? I helped Reef Nash, Gary and I, a couple of us helped Reef Nash last fall install an antenna. He's got a tiny little retiree lot. He's got a little vertical because that's the space he had. No trees, right? Little vertical. How many can I install? Can I make up for other considerations by quantity, right? If I'm really into DX, are you into DX? Do you like DX? Nope, she's done. I'm out. She said, I want the repeater. Yeah, right? Maybe I install 3 easier antennas than 1 more expensive antenna. Again, what's this thing going to cost me? What directions can I put up? And think in 3D, that matters, right? A lot of times we talk about, well, my lot's only so big. Well, that's not the only direction. There's actually 3 that you need to think about. Compass directions, but also height, because that matters, depending on what you're trying to do. Is your wife tolerant? Is your wife or husband tolerant of what you've put up? Right. Does my available for areas lend itself to particular shapes? Maybe I have a lot that's a great characteristic for a sloper, or an L or a U or a bent long wire. I don't know. You can make a Z-shaped dipole, right? What in the near field will impact my RF emissions? Just because you put up an antenna and you put it in the middle of a space, that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing's going to interfere with it, right? We got to know what that means. So this is what I mean by thinking in 3 dimensions. You have to think in azimuth. So the Mercator projection map that you're most used to is a lie. Well, not really. It's true, but also a lie. For us. For radio purposes, it's a lie, right? So this is a map, and I should have put the reference on here. There's a site that'll generate this online. So this is a map if I was literally the center of the world. You are. Thank you, Nick. I'm the center of the world right here, right? This is what the world looks like to my antennas. Argentina is closer than China. Look, Indonesia is way, way over there. Europe, actually kind of close. Madagascar is really far away. There's Japan hanging out. Sydney, Australia is further away than the geographic South Pole, right? If you look at a Mercator projection, or what you think of as a standard map, this concept is completely distorted by what the map looks like. Things, radio-wise, are closer or further away in this type of view electrically, right? Because this is electrically. This is where your signal is going to go, right? So you have to think, what does the world look like from where I'm trying to put up this antenna? What does the world look like at the American Legion Hall in Rittman? Wonder why we're going to talk about this, right? Field day. At the Legion Hall this year, we're going to put up 2 fan dipoles that are going to be in line at 130 to 310 degrees, give or take. Why? Well, what? That's where the people are, right? So this is a dipole. So we have that, if you're looking down, right, you have that figure 8 shape. Off the broad sides, very powerful. Off the ends, not so much. Well, if these are our ends, and this is the broad side, where's all the people? They're all down here. There's a shocking number of hams in the South. I don't know. There's a lot, I mean, you're getting most of the United States broadside to a dipole at 310 degrees. You're going to pick up the New England states. We get the populous parts of Canada. Sorry, people in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and if you're in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. Hopefully you're not in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. You have a problem. You have a different problem than trying to get a radio there, right? So this plays into the ideas on azimuth. So if we go back and look at this, right? If we were trying to work DX or do a contest, right? A dipole slicing this way makes a lot of sense to get to Europe and down to Mexico, but you're kind of cutting off parts of South America. You know, you're not going to hear anything in the South Pacific, right? Because this is where those nulls are. So if I'm trying to fill up my DXCC, for example, or I really want to get into like DXpeditions that are in the Pacific, I don't want to install a single dipole at 310 degrees because that would be wrong for what I'm trying to do. Does this make sense? Yes. All right. Is it all coming together now? All these random things, right? What nearby interferes? Near field versus far field. Essentially, near field are things that are going to interfere with your antenna before before the energy has left your antenna completely, right? what's it say here? The generation and emission of electromagnetic waves can be interfered with while the field lines remain electrically attached to the antenna. Things close to your antenna. Far field, the region where the field is settled into normal electromagnetic radiation, blah, 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 blah. Things not near your antenna, right? Basically, what things right by my antenna will mess with its performance? I love off-center fed dipoles. 4-to-1 balance will get really screwed up if you're reasonably close to a structure, especially a structure that has lots of metal in it. They actually make special balance for near field effect on 4-to-1 balance. Because if you use a regular one, it's not going to work the way you think. That's because the radiation pattern and the way the balun interacts with the near field screws up your antenna. So is your antenna going to be strung over your house? Or is your antenna going to be 200 yards in the backyard away from everything? Right? A vertical antenna on 2 meters is going to be incredibly hampered by a tree. Hanging a wire in a tree is not going to hurt a wire antenna at all, because the tree vertical in the near field to FM just absorbs the radiation because you've stuck your antenna up against a tree. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you stick your whole antenna right up against a tree? You know? Yeah.
What was the balun that we used in the building project last year?
It was a 4-to-1 off center. It's a dual core. It's better from this problem.
Oh, it does it separate.
Yeah. Yes. It's a nice balance. But again, that's a great example of knowing what you're building for, right? You can save some money if you don't have to worry about this. You got to put 2 cores in a combined current and voltage balun if you're going to put it over your house. If you're going to put it near your house. If you're going to put it near your shed. If you're going to put it near your Scrooge McDuck style gold vault, right? So, a couple ideas for antennas. So again, looking down at the top, looking at it from the side, this is a horizontal dipole. This is where we see heights matter. 1/8 wavelength in height has this weird oval shape, but you have a -10 gain, a 10 dB loss. 5/8 wave though, in height, no loss off the broadside, right? Because remember, your dipole's going this way. Here's a good example of how nulls aren't really nulls. So in this example, your dipole at 5/8 wave has a loss of about 14 dB. It's not -70, right? There's some power coming off there, so it's not nothing. It's just not as much as that. Similarly, if you look at it from the side, from your takeoff angle, right? Here, this is an interesting example where in this case, the higher one puts these strange nulls about 45 degrees. So you're sending a lot of energy up, you're sending a lot of energy very low. But a half wavelength might be that sweet spot, right? We talk about dipoles being a half wavelength off ground for perfect. Well, kind of perfect, but not really. We'll talk about that. Inverted V, right? A lot of us use inverted V antennas. I couldn't find a better picture of this. I don't like this picture. It's the best one I could find on short notice. So here's your inverted V pattern. In this case, in this diagram, the dipole's going this way, right? Well, your V shape smooths out. Oops. All right, now we're just going the wrong way. One more. Remember, this is more of that more defined H shape, and you sort of have like this hat shape or a bean, depending on which way you're looking at it, right? But what do we have here? Well, the null is more pronounced, but your radiation pattern is very different, right? In this case, you're sending a lot more power up than you are off to the side. Not that you're sending no power off to the side, but you're sending more power straight up to bounce down that's going to be closer in than if you're sending power way off to the side to bounce way around the Earth. A loop. We've talked a lot about large loops. Well, the large loop kind of has this, I don't know what you want to call that, two potatoes smushed together? Fried eggs, yeah, a blob, right? You have this, you're looking from the top down, you got, except for a couple of dips, you've got pretty good omnidirectional performance. But look at your elevation pattern now. You're sending almost no power straight up into the air. It's all optimized for about a mid-range distance, right? Sloper. Sloper has this almost perfectly omnidirectional antenna except in the direction of where the slope is, right? This is this, right there. What?
That explains how mine works.
Yeah. So you got a little dip, but not bad, right? But if you look, a lot of the directions have this loss. But here's the elevation pattern. It's kind of really weird shaped, right? And you have this bigger notch on the one side than the other. This is a great example of where a structure interferes a little bit with your radiation pattern. Now, does this mean you can't talk to anybody on this side of the thing? No. It has an effect. All right, I got to seriously invest in a new clicker. Seriously. Yagi. Right? Yagi optimized for front to back performance. Well, here's the front, here's the back, here's the sides. Where's the power? Front. Look at the elevation though. It's low and it's almost entirely directed to one side, right? That's where it's delivering the power that we sent to your feed line. So here's a vertical antenna, right? An HF vertical, a VHF, UHF. A lot of times we talk about the length of a vertical antenna in terms of the physical length of its wave. 5/8 wave, that's the most, 5/8 and half waves are the most common in VHF and UHF. These are almost perfectly optimized to send your FM signal out rather than up. Where's your repeater? Is it up there or is it over there? Right? 3/4 waves, interestingly enough, start to send your power in the wrong direction. That's why if you look especially at like VHF and UHF antennas, I have a Comet GP3. It has two stacked 5/8 wave, 70 centimeter segments in it. Well, why don't I want one full-sized wave? Well, because that's not where I want my power to go. The repeater's over there, it's not up there. I mean, you could have a space repeater. I guess there's one on the space station, but there's one. Are you really going to build a station to optimize for the one, right? Multiband antennas. Take everything we just talked about and smush them all together for whichever bands you're talking about, right? Some of these designs allow for natural resonance or near enough, again, your tuner can work it, on multiple bands. Fan dipoles, you have one set of legs per band. We're going to use this at Field Day again this year. We used one back in 2018. We're going to have two fan dipoles, 80-40-20 and 20-15-10. Off-center fed dipoles. These are one of my favorite antennas. A 14% off-center fed dipole is tunable from 8 to 6, except for 60 and 30. Vertical. This is the GP3 I mentioned. It's a half wavelength on 2 meters plus 2 stacked 5/8 wavelengths on 70 centimeters. This is an absolutely incredible antenna for talking to the repeater or talking to far-flung repeaters. I can talk to an amazing amount of repeaters with this about 20 feet off the ground from the end of my garage. Some designs lend themselves to modifications, which make them electrically longer or shorter than their physical length. You might say, why would I want to make something shorter than their physical length? Well, right there, that's why. You can add coils, resistance load. We used the terminated folded dipole at Field Day a couple years. We're making a shorter antenna seem longer and more broad-banded by adding a resistance load to the antenna. Is that good? Is it bad? It depends on what you're really trying to do. In a lot of military and emergency communications, they use terminated folded dipoles because they're extremely broad-banded and you're not trying to talk across the Pacific Ocean, right? You're trying to talk to the next county or the next state or a third of the way across the country or to the closest military base, right? So in this case, it makes sense because you're optimizing for something. You can add traps or LC circuits. You can add capacitance hats. I mentioned my Gap Titan. That's how it tunes on 80 meters. It's literally got a plug plugged into the top. That on mine, I chose 3.8 megahertz. I got 100 kilohertz centered at 3.8 megahertz, and it's perfect. If I graph it, right? Multiband antennas, they work. Compromises. The antenna you have is better than the antenna you don't have. Some hams talk about compromise antennas. Every time I see the phrase compromise antennas, I'm like, quit saying that. All antennas are compromises. Literally no perfect uncompromised antenna exists anywhere at any time at any point in history ever. You cannot have a perfect uncompromised antenna. It does not exist. So know which elements of the antenna mostly affect your station and optimize for it. Who do I want to talk to? Where do I want to talk to? How many antennas do I want to put up? I don't know. I want to talk to, I'm interested in Field Day. Well, an inverted V fan dipole gives me 3 bands that's going to cover the whole United States. Right? Probably not going to get a lot of traffic from the Solomon Islands or Antarctica or sub-Saharan Africa, but I can talk to everybody I want to on Field Day. I have a small lot. Okay, well, can I put my dipole or my vertical on the southwest side of my house? Because I looked at the azimuth plot and 65% of the country isn't in the shadow of my house, right? Unless you're trying to take your station to the next level, do not get overly concerned with other types of talking points. We covered height, overground, or NVIS. The antenna you have is better than the antenna you don't have. Just because you can't put a 40-meter dipole 20 meters off the ground does not mean that a 40-meter dipole doesn't work, that you only get 25 feet off the ground. It will work. You will make contacts. You will make lots of contacts. You will be surprised at how far away the contacts you made really are. Perfect symmetry. A crooked dipole is okay. Curves are okay. Now, not crazy, right? But if you have to make a couple of zigzags to get around something, or I can make it like this 85-degree arc or a Z shape to weave between trees, that will work.
I was just going to say, one of my old bosses, John Dolliner, who's president of NORS, lives in an HOA. And he has it in his attic, basically wrapped around his whole attic.
Right.
The upper state, the structure of the dipole. And it
Yeah.
works perfectly.
Yeah, a loop dipole in an attic, very common. Needing magical numbers of radials. You see a lot of vertical antennas that say this will only work if you have 24 evenly spaced radials made out of gold that were blessed by unicorns? No. More radials within a diminishing amount of returns will provide better behavior. Do you need it? Is the cost of running 24 radials worth running 4 radials? Or maybe I want a really long vertical antenna, like an 80 or a 160 that I've put a coil on. Am I going to run 32 160 meter radials? You can. You better have a horse pasture to do it in and $10,000 of copper wire, right? You don't need it. Is it better? Yeah, probably, kind of. You don't need it, right? What are you trying to do? Antennas that claim magical properties are not magical. They just have characteristics that work well for certain situations. Cough, cough, G5RV, cough, cough. Does the G5RV work? Is it a good antenna? Yes. Does it work in all situations? It does not. Does it talk to everything you want it to do? No, it does not. Right? There's end-fed half waves are big right now for some reason, right? end-fed half wave, good antenna. Long, easy to build. It's not any more magical than any other antenna. It has characteristics that are good for certain situations, right? People will buy a G5RV hearing someone rave about their G5RV, and they'll hook it up to the side of their house, hang their coax down, and they're like, I can't hear anything. Yep. Because a G5RV loads the feed line, and you've got to have it way away from any structure for it to actually work. You have to know the antenna, and you have to know the characteristics of the antenna, right? Why does the little rubber duck HT on my handheld work? Well, it's essentially a radiating dummy load, but you don't have to go very far, so it's perfect, right? Do you really want to be the guy carrying around the half wavelength 2-meter whip on his back, you know, banging through every doorway, right? Ron wants to be that guy. Ron is that guy. Everybody else does not want to do that because a reasonably constructed rubber duck antenna is not perfect. It has lots of losses, but it's optimized for what its function is, right? And is better than no antenna. Great resources. The ARRL handbook. I actually like the ARRL antenna book obviously better than the handbook for antennas, obviously, because it's about antennas. But I think the material, even the basic material in antenna handbooks is actually better. There's a guy, he's passed away now a number of years, L.B. Siebeck. He was a prolific writer in the 60s, 70s, 80s on antennas. Recently, someone worked with his family to release a lot of his material on the internet. There's a 3-volume series called Antennas Made of Wires. It's not the easiest read, but it has some really interesting information on how to build wire antennas for all sorts of different situations based on all of the characteristics that we talked about. I will also give you a warning that much of the information on the internet is wrong. Just because it's on the internet. Yeah. Abe Lincoln vouched for the G5RV. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. That's it. Questions? Yeah, Fred.
You know, you were talking about the rubber ducks and laughing about it, but I had an HT where I had a rubber duck, and I made what they call a tiger tail,
Yeah.
which comes down on. And actually, it does give better performance. It's kind of crazy, and it hangs, and it's annoying, but it works better.
But you know why that works better? Is because you're actually, so a tiger tail is not actually connected to the radiating portion of your antenna. A tiger tail is actually this. You're creating a better counterpoise for the antenna to react against. So rather than putting a much larger radiator on your radio, you're giving it a better counterpoise to reflect the energy off of. Because the theory behind an HT is you're the reflector. You're a fleshy bag of water that's not that great of a reflector, right? A wire is a better reflector than your body. Yeah.
One other question. You covered antennas really well, okay? But besides looking for what antenna you want and where you want to go, explain to me this, other than the ionosphere, a guy in Nebraska, middle of Nebraska, and all my friends get pissed off when I say this, transmits 30 watts on a horizontal, I think it was 20 meter
Yeah.
horizontal antenna, to Seychelles.
Yep.
That's like 9,600 miles away. Now, yeah, the gods were in focus, and the ionosphere was great, and everything was right, and NDIS and whatever. But everybody's saying, I can't do this, I can't get where I want to go. But if you keep trying day after day after situations change, whatever antenna you choose that you're talking about, sooner or later you're bound to hit it. It's like a ladder.
Yeah. Well, if you look at, I think we've talked about it in other talks here. If you look at like something like PSK Reporter, right? Even if you don't use PSK or FT8, you can look at PSK Reporter and see where those band openings are, right? All of a sudden you see a whole bunch of traffic between Nebraska and the Seychelles, and then maybe you see it moving a little east. And maybe you're in the path of moving it east, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to get to the Seychelles, right? Tropospheric ducting, the right condition for it to, bounce along, the right number of hops to get. There's lots of reasons, right? You can try, like I have an off-center fed dipole that's kind of oriented a little bit off north, like north-northeast to south-southwest. You would not think that it's a great antenna to get to Europe because it faces the wrong direction. Sometimes it performs better talking to Europe than my gap tightened vertical does. I've got him on an AB switch, and if I call a guy back a couple times and he doesn't hear me, I just switch it over to the other one and try, and a lot of times the other one works, right?
I have an antenna, an in-fed wire antenna of 55 inches, and believe it or not, I talked to Italy
Sure.
on less than 100 watts. It was polarized north and south.
Yep.
What are you going to castrate monkeys?
You got the right angle. It's going the right way. You hit the, yep. And that's know your antenna. Know the performance of your antenna. So, anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Oh,
Gary says wait.
wait a minute. Does the angle of incidence equal the angle of reflection?
No.
I thought it did.
Kind of. It depends on what you hit. Nothing is a perfect reflector.
You're just shattering my whole...
Yeah, he's got.
Okay, everybody, thank you for attending tonight. Jason, let's give him a good round of applause. Thanks, Jason. Where's Harry? Anyway, all right. Thank you, everybody. Barometer Net tomorrow morning at the ungodly hour of 7 a.m. Be there or be square. Or both. And we'll see you next month. Oh! One last thing. Last word. Last word is the Field Day t-shirt sale is live on our website. So, get your t-shirt. Don't forget you need a short sleeve and a long sleeve. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good week.